And I'm Doug Rice. You know what? I want the neighbors complaining now. I don't just want the audience walking out because the horn's speaker system is just tucked away underneath their asses. And some folks shat on themselves. I don't just want lawsuits. I want building damage. I want infrastructure instability. Good morning. Doug Rice, 7 a.m. in the morning. It's the Doug Rice Show. Used to be Let's Talk, but let's go. Yeah, let's walk. You know, look up there at the corner. Look up there. See the little walking man packed? That's me. Yeah, that's us. I'm telling you, fuck back of the bus. I'm off the bus. I read yesterday, folks, I don't know why, this just come to mind. You never know when you look what you find, you know. The whole fiasco about, sitting at the back of the bus, the Rosa Parks, and they put it in my face yesterday. I don't even know why, they just did it. The whole thing orchestrated. You're taught in school about the defiance of our negrosity, right about the 50s, right? And turns out the whole thing's a staged, just put on a freaking, a play, a scripted, facade. And I found that odd that they seemingly today go out of their way to say that these things are at play. All right, folks, how you doing? Let me tell you a little bit about myself. 7 a.m. hour. Listen, used to do this at 6 a.m. every day on TikTok. Had 70,000 followers. Ruined it. Just tossed it aside, cast it asunder. Opened my mouth. Well, yeah, no need to wonder. I screwed that up. And it's the reason I stay away from TikTok lives, because when I do those lives, I don't seem to survive. I just don't. And they want me to curb my mouth, and I won't. I'm a Negro in America. I don't know about you, but lately I know exactly what to do. And what I do these days, folks, and just to give you insight into my ways, about January 6, 2021, that's when my mind came undone. As I watched caucasity storm the walls of the Capitol, and I screamed at the television for 8 straight hours. Oh, yes, it is. It's recorded history, folks. Oh, I did that. I sure did. Ain't no joke. I sure did. Katrina was there. She sure was. She's the moderator right there. She's the person that holds us at bay. She's the person that makes sure I say all the things that don't hold me to sway. And today, folks, you have Katrina to thank for all that we have now put in our bank. I will tell you, we have a bank of PDF files that will certainly put smiles on Negroes for a long while. Let me tell you something. So what we do is this. Since January 6th, I have been, just all amiss. I've come out of my character and into something else. I have put the old Doug Rice up on a shelf, and I'm now determined. I am just determined that Negroes are learning what we, while we're burning. And today, as I go about the narration of our PDF file, post-traumatic slave syndrome. Post-traumatic slave. Boy, what a way to bring in a Monday. What a way to change a time slot. We were at 10 o'clock. Now we're at 7. And we just want to get to it, folks. Make sure the bread is unleavened. Hey, Post-traumatic slave syndrome, America's legacy of enduring injury and healing. Now, if you know how I adjusted the subtopic of this book, you know how I'm feeling, because it is the Negro legacy of enduring injury. I mean, that's what I see. I like I love the title, Post-Traumatic Slave Syndrome, but that bottom there, that gives some hope to this situation. And let me just say, unequivocally, today, there is no hope. No. So as much as Joy and Miss DeGruy, Ph.D., as I do see, with a foreword by Randall Robinson, say that post-traumatic slave syndrome today is a part of America's legacy of enduring injury and healing. Well, no, I do not believe that is true. This shit's left our mind reeling. I do. So I recommend this. We will give this freely. We do not sell these PDFs. We also give them in exchange for any donation that you might arrange going to our donation links that I will put below. And listen, folks, I do this show in this manner. Since that day, January 6th, I've said, you know what? I've got to do something. I want to talk about, listen, things aren't as they appear. Things aren't as they seem. I mean, you got to understand and know what I mean. This is a joke. This is a play. This is a script of their making. And all of this was done for our legacy they're taking. You better understand what's going on. There's some fuckery afoot. Now, I mean, listen, I don't pull punches. I don't mince words. So hopefully you'll, endure my show as much as you're able to. And so this is what we do. We review the PDFs. We offer them in exchange for your support. We offer them freely if you ask them. If you ask for them, I retort. I don't sell these things. I obtain them, and I enjoy the knowledge that they bring. But I will not call myself selling them. And that's the reason I've told you all you got to do is ask for them, and I'll give them to you. But if you want to support this effort, please use the links below. And now we're going to get on with this dadgum show. All right, how you doing? Good morning, 7:08, the 18th of September, 2023. Good Lord. If you looked at the news, what do you see? I see them coming unglued. I see them trying to exude their past, their present, their future. There's not a Band-Aid, there's not a stitch, there's not a suture, there's nothing that will repair what we see going on out there. They're cascading into full panic mode. Let them. This ain't our abode. We are in the midst of post-traumatic slave syndrome. Some of us more than others. I'd rather be out of this place if I had my druthers. If I could leave, I would. Best believe I should. I think we could. But this place is no good. So let's take a look at it. Dr. Joy DeGruy, praise for the post-traumatic slave syndrome. Hope everybody can see that. Dr. Joy DeGruy, I'm going to butcher that name. She is a priceless asset to us all. She has lifted the bandages from the 400-year-old abscess of slavery that remains unhealed. Many Black and white Americans have been taught that slavery ended by legislative means in 1865. So the issue is neatly sidestepped in school curricula, print, and broadcast media. However, the hallmark of classroom teaching and responsible journalism must be proper context for full understanding. The removal of the slave shackle is important, but what about the emotional damage suffered by the enslaved? Dr. DeGruy has raised this argument brilliantly for years, lecturing far and wide. Her many appearances on whatever this program might have been, like it is, have evoked huge audience reactions from our viewers. This is a forward, might I add, by Mr. Robinson. So Mr. Robinson had a show Like It Is, and so I didn't want to take his words out of his mouth. Excuse me. Many have told me how coming to understand Dr. DeGruy's message on post-traumatic slave syndrome has helped them grapple with the multiplicity of problems today. I share those feelings of my viewers. Now, Dr. DeGruy has set down her highly important message/thesis in print. And so, to quote this wondrous physician, let the healing begin. Gil Noble, okay, producer and host Like It Was, WABC. I'm just all over the place, isn't it, right? All right, so Dr. Joy DeGruy's Post-Traumatic Slave Syndrome, America's Legacy of Enduring Injury and Healing, or as I call it, Negro Legacy of Enduring Injury Without Healing, unless we get the hell out of this place, is a masterwork. You like that better? I do too. Her deep understanding, critical analysis, and determination to illuminate core truths are essential to addressing the long-lived devastation of slavery. Her book is the balm we need to heal ourselves and our relationships. It is a gift of a wholeness. My God, they love this woman. All right, cool. All right. I mean, here's the deal, folks. Let me just hold on. Listen, there's no hope. Stop. Land there, leave it there, pack your shit. That's all, that's it. Listen. The notion that somehow this can be salvaged is just more than I can bear. It's more than I can accept, and so it is an unacceptable notion. It is no longer viable. It is no longer feasible. It is no longer a notion that Negroes need cling to, not those that want to hold on to themselves, those that freely give who they are away to these oppressors and say, take it. I no longer want it, it is yours. Then you know you can take that and just... Anyway, I believe it is our, I want to say destiny to leave this place. Were brought here, against our own will. And yet and still we remain. And most of us have gone quite insane, but it's a hidden insanity, devoid of the notion of humanity. And I mean that. We don't know what it's like to be free from the presence of these individuals. That's part of this legacy of traumatic slave syndrome. I mean, consider carefully who you emulate and why. Moving on. Here we go. All right, so post-traumatic slave syndrome, American legacy enduring injury. We got some pretty good. I mean, the forward is good. Let's just assume the forward is good. This is where you may order the book. This is where it is originally published. I'm certain if you go to her website, she will have an edifice for you to purchase this book. And I am not in any way whatsoever giving any non-permission to this book's writer. Since 2005, and it's been what now, coming on 20-something years, I'm pretty sure she ain't gonna give two hoots. And if she does, I'm in the book. Trust and believe. I won't leave. So, anyway, there it is. That's my disclaimer. I'm sure that my moderator would agree. There you go. Now you see. Moving on. Boom. Rights reserved. Printed. Boom. There you go. Dedicated to the memory of my parents, Oscar and Nella DeGruy, who provided me with the foundation that has enabled me to realize my potential, whose love and toil helped to mold and shape the person that I have become. This work is the fruit of their labor. Well, they're doing well in presenting this, I can tell you that. Chapter 1, I don't even notice race. Who says that? Who says that in this place? Chapter 2, whole to 3/5 dehumanization. My goodness. Whoa, 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 whoa. Easy, fella. That mouse is tricky. Chapter 3, crimes against humanity. Chapter 4, post-traumatic slave syndrome. Chapter 5, slavery's children. Hey, chapter 5 was so good, they put it in twice. I'm just joking. Chapter 6, healing and the epilogue with acknowledgments. All right, so this ought to be good. African Americans are being urged not only by the traditional bastions of American power, but by many successful blacks as well, to forget slavery, to forget Jim Crow, to forget all about that Africa was prior to the advent of transatlantic slavery. In this far-sighted and thoughtful book, Joy DeGruy adds her voice to those who are telling Black Americans to what? Pay no attention to such a disastrous advice. Now, I like that. I think I'll read that twice. In this book, Ms. DeGruy adds her voice to those who are telling Americans to pay no attention to the disastrous advice of forgetting about all of the history they want us to so desperately forget about. And as much as African Americans are the only Americans who forebears were dragooned to America against their will and enslaved in America for nearly 3 centuries, 4. Curiosity about our past, questions about our ancestors, known and unknown, and a need to know about Africa before we were torn from its breast is not only normal, but indeed is a sign of a healthy intellect, psyche, and soul. Mr. Robinson, who penned this forward, Randall Robinson, he had good things to say about the book. I like this. This is interesting. Now, there's also a prologue, and I don't know if you understand how we go through these books, but we go through the chapters for as long as my voice might hold out. I do not review this book beforehand. Let me say that offhand, without doubt. I do not. I'm as enthralled or shocked or in agreement, disagreement. I give my commentary. And again, I don't condone or I don't take away or detract from anything I read. I just read it because I think this information Negroes need. And I just seed it out there. Anyway, so let's move on. Here's a prologue, a little bit of it. Khazarian Injera. I don't know. And how are the children? Khazarian Injera. Among the most accomplished and fabled tribes in Africa, no tribe was considered to have warriors more fearsome or more intelligent than the mighty Maasai. It is perhaps surprising then to learn the traditional greeting that passed. Khazarian Injera. And how are the children? Thank you. The traditional greeting that passed between Maasai warriors, Khazarian Injera. One would always say to another, it means, and how are the children? It is still the traditional greeting among the Maasai, acknowledging the high value that the Maasai always place on their children's well-being. Even warriors with no children of their own would always give the traditional answer. All the children are well, meaning, of course, that peace and safety prevail, that the priorities of protecting the young, the powerless, are in place, that Maasai society has not forgotten its reason for being, its proper functions and responsibilities. All the children are well means that life is good. It means that the daily struggles of existence, even among a poor people, do not preclude proper caring for its young. I wonder how it might affect our consciousness of our own children's welfare if in our culture we took to greeting each other with this same daily question. And how are the children? I wonder if we heard that question and passed it along to each other 12 times a day, if it would begin to make a difference in the reality of how children are thought of or cared for in this country. I wonder if we could truly say without any hesitation, the children are well. Yes, all the children are well. This excerpt from a speech by the Reverend Dr. Patrick T. O'Neill, the first Parish Unitarian Universalist Church in Farmington, Massachusetts. So how are the children? What a waste, in my opinion. What a waste of such brilliant Negro intellect to coincide and come into line with what we know is nothing more than a furthering of their line. I mean, listen, I have not been formally taught by any educational edifice or orifice. You may have thought. Self-taught is how I've done what I've done. And I look at these folks like these reverends who believe they've won. But I can imagine the attitude they must carry with them in the presence of our oppressors as they greasily foment and let slide out of their vile mouths all the things that such elevation brings in order to be amongst that rarefied air, in order to remain your Negro behind up there. So how are the children? Throughout recorded history, people have subjugated, enslaved, and even at times exterminated one another. Sometimes these acts were committed in the name of a king or queen, other times in the name of a tribe or a country. Often they were committed in the name of God. Always they were done to consolidate and expand the power of a selected few. Always vast numbers of people died for no good reason. Always, even a greater number of people needlessly suffered to sate the appetites of that select group. These are crimes against humanity, and these crimes continue to be executed across our planet to this day. These crimes are perpetrated in a seemingly never-ending cycle. The powerful oppress the less powerful, who in turn oppress those even less powerful than they. These cycles of oppression leave scars on the victims and victors alike, scars that embed themselves in our collective psyches and are passed down through generations, robbing us of our humanity. For who can be truly human under the weight of oppression that condemns them to a life of torment, robs them of a future, and saps their free will? Moreover, who can become truly human when they gain so much from the pain and suffering of those whom they oppress and or take advantage of? Many say these conditions are part and parcel of the human condition. Perhaps they are. But ever so often, a Gandhi or a Mandela graces our planet and helps their people break the cycle for a time. Time has come now to follow their lead, break the cycle, and once again claim our humanity. Breaking this cycle and claiming our humanity will require much work from all of us. Those who have been the victims of years, decades, and centuries of oppression first must heal from injuries received firsthand, as well as those passed down through the ages, those who have been the perpetrators of these unspeakable crimes, and those who continue to benefit from those crimes have to honestly confront their deeds and heal from the psychic wounds that come with being the cause and beneficiaries of such great pain and suffering. Well, I'm just going to stop there because here's the deal. Those individuals will never be that honest. There will be no honesty that will come into fruition that will ever accomplish that mission. The words are well put together. I mean, they're not poorly done. It's just that the only way that we truly win is to leave, and then we've won. That's it. There's no healing from within the wound. You understand? We sit in the wound, the festering wound, with the expectation of healing. The more we look inside that wound, the more the wound is revealing. Okay, I drift. So, there's an introduction as well. My God, on with the show. So an introduction, sank ava, return and get. Sankava, is that it? Looks like almost coffee-like. I don't know, let me take a sip. Hold on. Sankofa, I'm sure it's a word, an African word. Return and get it. It's a good thing I didn't read it. No, I didn't read this, so I don't know what it's going to say. Here we go. I don't know. Here we go. We must return and claim our past in order to move forward toward our future. It is an understanding who we were that will free us to embrace who we now are, the meaning of Sankofa. Well, let me go ahead and yell. I like that one. Let's go ahead and read that one again. Sankofa, that must be the word, or Sankofa. Let's try Sankofa. Sankofa, I like that. That's African-like, yeah? Okay. We must, all of this in one word, folks, get the thrust. We must return and claim our past in order to move toward our future. It is an understanding who we were that will free us to embrace who we are now. That is pretty deep. I like that right there. I like that. In the summer of 1994, my sister, my niece, and I were among 9, here they go, African-American women that traveled to Southern Africa together. Upon my return, I found it difficult to adjust to being back in Portland, Oregon. The city once touted as being the whitest city in America. Dear God. My 6-week journey throughout Southern Africa had left an indelible mark on my heart and soul. I sat in my living room reminiscing about the villages in Lesotho, the sweetness of the children, the level of generosity, and their well-behaved and well-mannered behavior. But let me tell you something. Did they tell you they enslaved you? What? What'd you think I was going to do? You think I was just going to read this through? I know you did. I know you did too. Let me just say, I'm going to interject my predilection of, I don't know, correction in this affection. Look, I understand you go back and, you love the land, you fall back. I understand. But there has to be a remembrance of how we arrived in this land. And that's one of the reasons going back to me just seems a bit, I don't know, matter of fact, I just don't get it. Seems a bit whack going back with the open arms that you expect and the feeling. All of that is wonderful. But the history we're dealing with. Okay? I'm not just going to go back like that. But, hey, isn't that wonderful? Let's just continue. I'm going to see what else they have to go, because we're not even in the first damn chapter yet. Jesus. And she says a lot here. She loved going back to Africa. Let me tell you. You can read these for yourselves, folks. You can indeed. And I recommend you do go to the actual website to procure this wonderful writing. She certainly deserves it. She's very eloquent, very well-spoken in her expression of how we address this mess we're in. You know what I mean? All right, let's try chapter 1 because we've seen the in-between. Here we go. And I love the chapter 1, don't you? I mean, the people that say this, the people that let this phrase come out of their mouths, I don't care who they are, black, white, north or south, I don't care. If you don't notice race, you are a lying individual right to my face. I'm sorry, you just are. Let's read this on. I want to read this one. Chapter 1. Again, this is post-traumatic slave syndrome. by Joy DeGruy. I hope I'm not butchering her name, Ph.D. A wonderful writer. Again, you guys know I'm a writer. I've tried to be a writer. I'm more of a Negro prose, little short type writing, you know, a little in and out, little staccato, little in your face type deal. I'm gonna get down there, the major writing, get real, but I'm gonna do that when I feel. Until then, we'll just do this. All right, here we go. I don't even know this race. What do you know? Racism, one of the most baneful and persistent evils, is a major barrier to peace. Its practice perpetrates too outrageous a violation of the dignity of human beings to be countenanced under any pretext. Racism retards the unfoldment of the boundless potentialities of its victims, corrupts its perpetrators, and blights human progress. Recognition of the oneness of mankind, implemented by appropriate legal measures, must be universally upheld if this problem is to be overcome. Now, let me pause right there. I don't want anyone to come undone. This is someone else's words. I appreciate them true. But that doesn't mean I hold to those words, and I don't suggest you do too. I do say this. I kind of like the fact that she has this hope, but as long as humankind's involvement with beings that are not quite human, there's no way to solve it. And I mean that. I mean, it's just bullshit. And, I would hope that, people watch this show, understand that I'm not a fatalist. I have a better hope, and it doesn't dwell below us or beneath us or above us, or it doesn't dwell with us. But I'm still going to read her words. I just wanted to say that and didn't want to go off script. So, hey, there's that. There we go. All right. Okay. The Bow Universe House of Justice, 1985 pretext. Excuse me. Wait, don't you do this to me. I arrived in South Africa in 1994 on the heels of the inauguration of President Nelson Mandela. As an African American sharing the same black skin of those impacted by apartheid, I set off prepared to face opposition and shunning by disgruntled white South Africans. My preparation resembled how one might respond after a run-in, perhaps a little flare up, a few harsh words with a coworker on a Friday afternoon. You know that you're going to see that person the following week, so you mentally plan for Monday. You may say to yourself, well, if they come in and they say that, this is what I'm going to say. You get the idea? So I had a kind of chip on my shoulder as I left Portland. Upon my arrival in South Africa, I was warmly greeted and enjoyed several uneventful weeks. In other words, didn't have a single negative encounter. So started to provoke people. She wanted to provoke people. I like this. I wasn't about to return home from South Africa without having had a real deep kind of experience to recount. So I would approach white South Africans and I'd say, tell me a little bit about that apartheid, huh? What was that like? On numerous occasions, they'd answer by saying, yes, Joy. It was an awful experience, the oppression of the blacks, the behavior of the whites. Glad it's over, though. Welcome to the new South Africa. My goodness, what a show. Listen, so this is narrated, and that's fine. That's great. I can do it. Interesting that she would go and exacerbate and kind of poke the bear over there, And the response is one that I would expect when the tables are turned. It ain't no fun when the rabbit gun a gun. I guess that's what they learned, huh? What an interesting outcome. Interesting story. Let's see what goes on. Somewhat puzzled by the responses, I decided to ask some blacks, South Africans. So I'd go up to the black South Africans and say, so tell me a little bit about that apartheid. Must have been awful. They'd say, Joy, it was awful. The oppression of the blacks, the behavior of the whites. Glad it's over, though. Welcome to the new South Africa. Interesting response. I was shocked and thought to myself, isn't anybody upset here in South Africa? Even we have our disgruntled folks back in America, like the neo-Nazis in Idaho. Later occurred to me that in the 6 weeks that I had spent traveling throughout South Africa, I had never felt the level of racial tension that I experienced at home in the United States. I experienced more tension during the brief time that I was in the Portland airport preparing to leave than I did throughout the entire time I had spent in Southern Africa. What an interesting insight. I had to ask myself, what am I observing in this experience? Why was there so little racial tension in South Africa? A country with fresh, open wounds of apartheid. And why so much racial tension in America, a country that ended its great sin of chattel slavery well over 100 years ago, and its version of apartheid almost 38 years prior to my visit to Southern Africa? Perhaps South Africans experience so little tension compared to Americans because officially, apartheid had such a short lifespan, about 45 years. Perhaps it is because in the end, they voluntarily gave up their unjust system. Perhaps it is because South Africa admitted their crimes to the world with the Truth and Reconciliation hearings. Many whites in South Africa owned up to the crimes they committed against their black countrymen. Whatever the reasons, it is clear America has chosen a very different path. I believe the ever-present racial tension in America is just one of the manifestations of our most serious illness, racism. Racism has run like poison throughout the blood of American society since Europeans first landed on these shores. And since that beginning, America and Americans have invested much in denying it. America's and Americans' denial of their blatant racism and the attending atrocities committed throughout the nation's history has become pathological. Such denial has allowed this illness to fester for almost 400 years. It is what keeps this country sick with the issue of race. At the root of this sickness is the unchallenged belief that there are physical differences between people that account for the intellectual attributes and abilities of those people. Since before the time of Aristotle, people have been using this idea of racial difference to justify the subjugation and enslavement of those different and less powerful than themselves. Let me pause. This ideation of race, the separation of humanity into the compartmentalized racial configurations, was simply a small part in the large cog of the wheel needed to enslave Negroes and steal their identity. Now, this might be a point lost to the writer. It's not a point lost to me. All things that they have done, the lightening of this entire globe, this racial construct that they've put upon it, all a part of the root cause, the root conspiracy involving all the nations, some by direct action, some by acquiescence, some by simply looking the other goddamned way. That's what this book incites. And I think that's what it should be trying to say. Next, all right, let's get back to it. I want to move on to chapter 2. Let's see what's happening. I mean, it's interesting, though. They do have something that's interesting called the myth of race. But, I'm not going to get in there because they start talking about, all kinds of stuff. And there's a lot of stuff to go through. There's probably going to be a part 2, but we'll see how we get through. Now, I don't remember how many chapters this book has. I believe there are quite a few. But we're going to get through as many of them as I can. Here's chapter 2. All right. So we remember reading about chapter 2. We remember, chapter 1, excuse me. We also remember reading chapter 2's title, Whole to 3/5 Dehumanization. I don't know what to tell you. They say, listen, 3/5 a human being. How do you gauge? You got to divide a human being into 5 parts and then determine that 3/5 of them are human in order to get this through some kind of way. I don't even understand how do you put that on paper and let the average man just I don't know. I can't mentally no. Back to the show. And Miriam and Aaron spake against Moses because of the Ethiopian woman he had married. For he had married an Ethiopian woman. I like how they put the Bible, they try to write it. And the anger of the Lord was kindled against them. From Numbers 12, 1 through 9. When I bring up the issue of slavery, all too often I am met with these words. Come on now. Slavery was an accepted institution throughout the world for thousands of years. Every culture has had slaves. Americans were no different. I've heard that shit too. I cannot begin to tell you how many times white people have presented this argument to me and to everyone else. Perhaps this is just another effort to trivialize or justify America's crime. Perhaps it's just another way people try to resolve their internal conflicts. Whatever the motivation, the lengths people will not go to confront their own history has never ceased to amaze me. The truth is, American chattel slavery was very different from most varieties of enslavement that preceded it. It differed in the manner in which a person became a slave. It differed in the treatment of slaves. It differed in the length of servitude. Most of all, it differed in the way owners viewed their slave. Before the European slave trade began in 1440, most people who became slaves became so as a result of war. 2 societies went to war, and the winners enslaved the losers. Sometimes, as was the case with Rome, a dominant society would need more laborers. So they made war on a weaker state and took the manpower they required. Europeans, however, systematically turned the capturing, shipping, and selling of other human beings into a business that would develop into the backbone of an entire economy, providing the foundation for the world's wealthiest nation. The first slaves arrived in the Americas from Africa in the early 1500s. Let's pause there for a moment because we're no longer wonder what's going on. You see how what we read dovetails with what we've read? You understand by what we read now, the other things that I've said? If you go back a few shows, you'll understand how and who those Europeans were that built up the backbone of enslavement. And again, I'll say, just so that you understand, all of this was done to enslave Negroes. All of this history that we're talking about, I mean, it's an interesting insight into it removed from the main and the center point. Very, very interesting. And that's the reason we do this show, folks. The reason that we provide our PDFs, because I know that, Detrina can put in chat the PDFs that go this with that. I know she can, because she's been on every show. I'm telling you. All right, let's just move on. All right, let's move on to the next. Sorry. What is it? It's 7:46. Wow. Well, I'm going to try one more. I'm going to do just one more. I don't know. Maybe one more chapter. I'll do something that looks interesting. Let's see what looks interesting. So it's an interesting insight. I could do this and read this all night, but because this is a good show. But let's talk about the title of chapter 2, and then we'll go. The 3/5 compromise. We subscribe to the doctrine, might one of our Southern brother observe, that representation relates more immediately to persons and taxation more immediately to property. And we join in the application of this distinction to the case of our slaves. But we must deny the fact that slaves are considered merely as property, and in no respect whatsoever as persons. The true state of the case is that they partake of both these qualities, being considered by our laws in some respects as persons, and in other respects as property. In being compelled to labor not for himself but for a master, in being vendible by one master to another master, and in being subject at all times to be restrained in his liberty and chastised in his body by the capricious will of another, the slave may appear to be degraded from the human rank and classed with those irrational animals which fall under the legal denomination of property. In being protected, on the other hand, in his life and in his limb against the violence of all others, even the master of his liver and his liberty, and in being punishable himself for all violence committed against others, the slave is no less evidently regarded by the law as a member of the society, but not as part of the irrational creation as a moral person, not as a mere article of property. They're trying to thread this, aren't they? The federal Constitution therefore decides with great priority on the case of our slaves when it views them in the mixed character of persons and property, that it is in fact their true character. It is the character bestowed on them by the laws under which they live, and it will not be denied that these are the proper criterion, because it's only under the pretext that the laws have transformed, listen to this, the Negroes into subjects of property. You know why I embrace that moniker, Negroes? They know who we are. That a place is disputed, I want to make sure, that a place is disputed them in the computation of numbers, and it is admitted that if the laws were to restore the rights which they have been taken away, the Negroes would no longer refuse an equal share of representation with the other inhabitants. Now, I'm going to pause there real quick because she's going to break it down, but let me tell you something. The reason I call our family a family of Negroes, you are holy Negroes, it's the only word they can't take. It's the only identifier they will not procure. They will leave Negro right there on the floor. We can pick it up, put it in our pocket, and lock it. And they know Negro separates us from Africans. You need to understand this, folks. Now, let's read what she wrote. Sound confusing? It should. Let me put this passage in perspective. James Madison, the primary author of the Constitution and slaveholder, wrote this passage during the Constitution Convention of 1787. One of the most heated debates at the convention was what to do about the slaves. Dear God. A number of delegates from northern states saw this as an opportunity to abolish slavery. Most of the southern delegates, most of whom were slave owners, intended to continue the practice. After much heated debate and argument, all but one state agreed to eliminate slavery. That one, South Carolina, threatened to go its own way and not become part of the United States if slavery was to be curtailed. The delegates, unwilling to lose South Carolina, acceded to its demands and so were stalemated. To resolve this logjam, the delegates decided to table the discussion of abolition to a later date, and slavery would continue to be legal under the Constitution. Well, isn't that great? I'm not going to continue. I'm going to land there. We're going to pick it up tomorrow from there. Now, consider the history, and I bring receipts. You know, I can tell you right now, they're salty. They're not sweet. This is straight salt, y'all. We throwing salt all over these folks. And the information that we discover ain't no goddamn joke. Now, look, there are other PDFs that are available to you. We've got a new list that I would like to share. And, you know, you've got Detrina, our moderator, to thank for this list right there. There you go, folks. So these have been added to the list of PDFs that we have. I will be going over some of these PDFs, and I'll be reviewing them and narrating them, and, you know, just giving you a little bit of, take, a little Dougism here and there, see what kind of joke I make. I don't know. But I do appreciate you tuning in to the Doug Rice Show. There again, that list, just so you got it. All right, folks, that's it. 7:53 in the morning. I appreciate your tuning in. I thank you very much for tuning into the Doug Rice Show. I'll be here every morning, 7 a.m. Pacific, 10 a.m. Eastern, and then noon on Sundays. Of course, as we all do, we take at least one day off, the Sabbath, and that's just become a habit. All right. Hey, I got to go. You guys have a wonderful day, and thank you, and enjoy the show. All right. Bye-bye. Wait! Damn it. Don't. Man. Listen. It's just the change in the show. I don't know. The atmosphere. Who knows? But before I let you folks out of here, let me just get your ear. Because I'm going to lay it right out here. I'm looking down. It's Monday, isn't it? Some of you are going out to work. Boy, you're going to be there by 9. I know I done caught y'all. Huh? But today, if we gone over this information, you've heard all the things that I have to say. You understand, how we got in this land should be a kind of reprimand on, how you walk about. And I'm going to tell you as nicely as I can, and I'm trying not to shout. If you got to go out there, and I know you do, you got to go to work to pay the bills, you should too. I know that you're going to be out there in all those familiar places. But if you got to be, do me a favor, get that goddamn grin off your faces. Thank you very much. Y'all keep in touch. Bye.